We move on to Jeremy Stephens taking on Yves Edwards, another lightweight bout. Tons of 155 bouts on this card. Stephens, 20 wins, 8 losses. Yves Edwards, 41 wins, 18 losses, and 1 draw. Stephens coming off a decision loss to Donald Cerrone on May 15th in his last bout, while Edwards coming off a decision loss to Tony Ferguson in December of last year in his last bout. Stephens, 14 of 20 wins via knockout. Edwards, 17 of 41 wins via submission with 15 knockouts. He finishes fights, even though he's got 9 wins via decision. If you're going to beat him, usually it's via decision. Edwards has lost 18 times, 10 of those via decision, 4 knockouts and 4 submission victories. Edwards is 36 years old, made his MMA debut way back in 1997, has a 9-6 UFC record. Stephens, 10 years younger, 26. He's from Iowa, but now training in San Diego with Alliance MMA. He made his pro debut in 2005 and has lost now 2 in a row with a 7-7 UFC record. His job, you got to believe, is on the line in this fight. This is an interesting one. Can the old veteran Yves Edwards come back and get a victory, or will it be Jeremy Stephens' time to remain in the UFC and keep his record above 500?
I actually think it's the old veteran's turn. I think Yves Edwards has looked unbelievably impressive since returning to the UFC. That unanimous decision loss to Tony Ferguson was, in my opinion, a baffling decision at that. I don't know what the judges were watching, and I remember being extremely upset with the final judge's decision in that bout. Yves Edwards wins this bout hands down, and perhaps hands Jeremy Stephens his walking papers.
So we move along to the main card. Josh Neer takes on Justin Edwards in a welterweight bout. Neer 33-11, Edwards 7-2. Neer coming off a knockout loss to McKough on June the 8th. Edwards coming off a decision loss to John McGuire in November of last year. He was supposed to fight at UFC 143 in February, but he got hurt. Edwards, 7 wins, 5 of those via submission. Neer, 17 of his 33 wins via knockout with 12 submissions. He has lost 5 times via decision, 4 submissions, and twice via knockout, while Edwards has only lost twice in his career, and both are via decision. Edwards, 29 years old, from Mansfield, Ohio, is 1-2 in the UFC. Neer, 7-7 in the UFC, also 29 years old. He's from Des Moines, Iowa. Neer, I think, has faced much tougher competition and has more experience. This, to me, is a slam dunk for Josh the Dentist Neer.
Yeah, there's no argument here. The guy's had 4 stints in the UFC. He was on a 6-fight win streak prior to his last bout. He's 7-7 in the UFC. Yeah, and I like Josh Neer, 33-11-1. Unbelievable amount of experience. He has almost 5 times the experience that Justin Edwards has. It's Josh Neer.
It's a weird matchup.
Yeah.
It's a weird matchup. John Dodson, the magician, taking on Jussier, Formiga, Da Silva, whatever this guy's name is. He's 14-1. We're calling him the Juice. The Juice versus the magician. Magician 13-5. Dodson coming off a decision win in the UFC over Tim Elliott on May the 5th, while Da Silva will be making, or Formiga, or the Juice, or whatever, he's making his UFC debut. He's coming off a submission win on June 29th in Brazil over a 5-3 fighter named Sidney Oliveira. Formiga has 14 wins, 7 of those via submission, 7 via decision, while Dodson, 6 of 13 wins via decision, 5 knockouts, and 2 submissions. Dodson has lost 5 times, but all of those are via decision. He's never been finished, while the Juice has lost only once in his career, and that was to Ian McKough, a decision in February of 2011 for the Tachi Palace promotion in California. Dodson is 28 years old. His opponent, 27. Dodson from Albuquerque, New Mexico, training with Greg Jackson, and is riding a 4-fight win streak after winning the Ultimate Fighter Season 14 at bantamweight, knocking out TJ Dillashaw last year. Da Silva's on a 5-fight win streak. He's from Brazil and is representing Team Nova União. This is for the number 1 contender at the UFC flyweight title, the Magician versus the Juice. This is very tough to call. We haven't seen a lot from the Juice, but I love what I've seen from John Dodson. I'm going to go with the Magic Man.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Magician as well. Dodson was injured in that bout against Timothy Elliott. It actually broke his hand. That's why he wasn't able to finish it. We haven't seen much from Jussier da Silva, like you just mentioned, fighting guys that are not necessarily of merit, losing to Ian McKough, which I think Ian McKough is still a very top-ranked. He still is, number 3 in our flyweight division. So that's very impressive from da Silva, but perhaps the octagon jitters, and also kind of like that whole pressure of, this is for a title shot, like right away.
Right away, first fight in the UFC for a title shot. It's a lot of pressure.
That is, but I like
Dodson, we've seen, under pressure, he won the Ultimate Fighter.
That's it. I like Dodson. I like Dodson in this bout.
We move on to the co-main event. It's Jake Ellenberger versus Jay Hieron. This is actually a rematch of a fight they had in the IFL way back in 2006, where Ellenberger actually lost a decision to Hieron. Ellenberger, 27 wins, 6 losses. He's coming off one of those losses, a knockout to Martin Kampmann on June the 1st, while Hieron coming off a submission win over a 22-10 fighter named Romario da Silva on July 13th in Houston, Texas. Hieron, 10 of 23 wins via decision with 7 submissions and 6 knockouts, while Ellenberger, 17 of his 27 wins via knockout with 5 submissions and 5 decisions. Ellenberger has lost 6 times, 4 via decision, 1 submission, and 1 knockout, while Hieron has lost 3 times, all via knockout. He's lost 5 times, 3 via knockout, and 2 via decision. Hieron actually lost to George St. Pierre back in 2004 and Jonathan Goulet in 2005 and lost a decision out in Bellator to Ben Askren.
After winning a tournament.
After being on a 10-fight win streak, he lost a very close split decision to Ben Askren, and a lot of people thought he won that fight. Hieron, 36 years old, was 0-2 in the UFC when he fought there in 04 and 05. He is from Freeport, New York, fighting at Extreme Couture, though, in Las Vegas, and was an NC2A Division I wrestler. Ellenberger was a Division II wrestler. He is 27 years old, from Omaha, Nebraska, and was on a 6-fight win streak prior to his last fight where he got knocked out by Martin Kampmann. Ellenberger 6-2 in the UFC, minus 375. The favorite is Jake the Juggernaut Ellenberger. Hieron plus 285 the dog. We only had the odds on a couple of these fights, as full odds aren't out yet, but we got the odds on this one. Ellenberger's a heavy favorite, and I'm not going to disagree. I'm going to go with the Juggernaut.
Real. I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think Jay Hieron may have been on a 10-fight win streak, but I believe he was a big fish in a small pond, whereas Jake Ellenberger was swimming with the sharks, knocked out Jake Shields, which was extremely impressive, picked up that win over Diego Sanchez. That slip, which caused his knockout of Martin Kampmann, that was kind of a fight that was going either way at that point. It was a fantastic bout. I just like Jake Ellenberger, as I don't think that Jay Hieron's been fighting that top flight competition.
And they fought in 2006, but when they fought in 2006, Hieron was 30 years old and had been fighting for 3 years, while Ellenberger was 21 years old and had been fighting for a year. And they went to a decision, and Hieron won. It's a very different situation when you're 21 years old and been fighting for a year, and now you've been fighting for 7 years and you're 27 years old. Or 6 years, rather, and you're 27 years old.
And
seven.
Your opponent at this point is 36, the aging fighter.
Exactly. I think it's a different situation. I think it's Ellenberger's revenge on Friday night, and we get to the main event.